The marketplace was filled with noise, shouts and laughter. Alien traders called out prices, showing off strange creatures in chains. Some were strong, some were weak. Some looked proud and some looked broken. People gathered in a circle around a wooden stage, their eyes full of greed and cruelty. On that stage, a small figure was pushed forward. It was a young alien girl, her body thin, her skin bruised. Her teeth were broken, her arms marked with cuts. She trembled under the harsh light. The crowd looked at her and began to laugh. Too ugly, one voice said, worthless. Not even good for work, another shouted. She will die in a week. No one wants that trash, someone mocked. The auctioneer tried to keep his voice strong. He lifted the girl's arm and forced her to turn. Here we have a young alien slave, strong spirit, still alive. Starting price 50 credits, but the crowd only booed. No hands were raised, no eyes showed interest. The auctioneer grew angry. His voice dropped lower. 30 credits, 20 credits, 10 credits, still. No one moved. The girl stood frozen, her large eyes wide with fear. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to beg, but no words came out. 5 credits, the auctioneer growled. Anyone? She is still breathing, she can still serve. The crowd laughed harder. Some pointed, some turned away. They did not see a living being. Only garbage that even death did not want. The girl's knees shook, she thought this was the end. If no one bought her, she knew where she would go. Back into the dark cages. Back to the cruel masters who beat her. She closed her eyes, waiting for the nightmare to continue. Finally, the auctioneer slammed his hand down, his voice dripping with shame. 2 credits, only 2, someone take her away, or she will rot here. The words echoed in the silent space. The people laughed louder, shaking their heads. For them, she was less than the price of dirty bread. At the edge of the crowd, a man stood quietly. He was human, tall but not strong-looking. His clothes were plain, his face tired. His eyes, however, were different. He watched the girl not with greed, not with mockery, but with something strange. A quiet sadness, a memory perhaps, something that others could not see. He looked at her trembling form, the bruises, the broken teeth, the way she hugged herself as if the world had already ended. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. She was not garbage, she was not worthless. She was a child who had been thrown away by a cruel world. The auctioneer shouted again, 2 credits, anyone. Take her before I drag her back to the pits. The human's hand slowly rose. His voice was calm but clear. I'll take her. The laughter stopped for a moment. People turned to look at him as if he had lost his mind. A human paying for trash, one muttered. What a fool, another laughed. Maybe he is lonely. Maybe he wants a pet, the crowd mocked, but the man did not reply. He walked forward through the jeers. His steps were steady. His hand held out the 2 credits without hesitation. The auctioneer snatched the coins, almost relieved. Sold. To the strange human, he shouted, pushing the girl off the stage toward him. The girl stumbled, falling to her knees at the human's feet. She dared not look up. Her heart pounded with fear. She thought he would beat her, chain her, or drag her to another prison. Her body was ready for pain, but instead a hand reached down. The human's hand was rough but gentle. He lifted her slowly. His voice was low, almost kind. Come with me. The crowd roared with laughter again. They shouted jokes, called him a fool. They said he wasted money, but he ignored them. He placed his old coat around the girl's shoulders, covering her thin body. Then he led her away from the stage, away from the laughter as they walked. The girl glanced up once, her eyes met his. She saw no cruelty, no greed, only a tired man with lonely eyes, a man who chose her when no one else wanted her. For the first time in her broken life, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside her heart. She did not know why he chose her or what he planned, but in that moment, she felt something she had forgotten long ago, the feeling of being seen. And so the 2 of them left the cruel marketplace together, one human and one unwanted slave. A choice worth only 2 credits, but carrying a weight far greater than anyone could imagine. The road away from the market was narrow and dusty. The human walked slowly, his hand still holding the girl's wrist. Not tight, not cruel, but steady. The alien girl staggered behind him, her weak legs almost giving out. Every step felt unreal to her. She was waiting for the pain, waiting for the whip, waiting for him to reveal his true face. But none of that happened. The man walked in silence, his coat still wrapped around her shoulders. Around them, the city buzzed with life, merchants shouting, machines flying above, strangers staring at the odd pair, a beaten slave and a lonely human. Some laughed, some whispered, but the man did not care. His eyes were fixed ahead. The girl kept her head lowered. Her mind was racing. Why would he buy her? She had no beauty, no strength, no skills. Even the traders said she was trash. He could have bought food, or tools, or anything else, but he chose her. Her heart trembled with confusion. Finally, they reached the edge of the city. The noise of the market faded. The path turned quiet, lined with broken houses and empty streets. The girl hesitated, thinking he would now show his true reason. Maybe he wanted to hide her. Maybe he planned to sell her again. Her chest tightened with fear. The man stopped at a small door. He opened it and led her inside. The house was old but not cruel. There were no chains on the walls, no cages, no whips. Just a simple wooden table, a chair, and a small bed in the corner. The air smelled of dust but also of warmth. The girl stood frozen. She expected orders. Maybe to clean, maybe to serve. Her hands shook as she waited. The man placed his coat on the chair and turned to her. His voice was quiet. "Sit," she hesitated. Her eyes searched for a trap, but he pointed to the bed. "Sit," he repeated. His tone was not harsh, not demanding, only tired. She slowly walked and sat. Her body was ready to flinch at the first strike, but instead he went to the table, poured water into a cup and brought it to her. He placed it in her hands gently. The girl stared at the cup, her fingers trembling. No one ever gave her water this way before. She was forced to drink from dirty bowls or left thirsty until she begged. She raised the cup to her lips and drank, the cool water flowing into her dry throat. For the first time she drank without fear. The man watched her quietly. His eyes softened. He spoke again. "You are safe here." The words hit her like a strange shock. Safe. That word had no meaning in her life. She almost dropped the cup. Her lips moved, trying to answer, but no voice came. Her throat was too weak. The man nodded as if he understood. He did not push her. He turned away, prepared some food, soft bread and soup. He placed it before her. The smell made her stomach twist with hunger, but she did not touch it. She thought maybe it was a trick. Maybe if she ate, he would strike her. The man noticed her hesitation. He sat down, broke a piece of bread, dipped it into the soup, and ate it himself. Then he pushed the plate closer to her. "Eat," he said simply. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Slowly, carefully, she picked up the bread. She chewed with her broken teeth, pain shooting through her gums. But the food was soft. He had chosen it for her. Her chest ached as she realized this. No one ever cared for her pain before. The man leaned back, his voice low. "My name is Daniel." He looked at her, waiting. "What's yours?" The girl froze. Her name, she had not spoken it for years. The traders never used it. They called her thing, trashed, and slave. She swallowed. Her lips trembling. In a broken whisper, she said, "Lyra." Daniel nodded, repeating softly, "Lyra." The way he said it was different, gentle, as if her name actually mattered. Her eyes widened. For the first time in forever, she was not invisible. Night began to fall. The room grew dark. Daniel lit a small lamp. Its glow filled the space with warmth. Lyra sat quietly, her body still weak but her heart racing. Why was he doing this? Why her? She wanted to ask, but the words stayed locked in her chest. Daniel sat near the table, his eyes heavy. He looked tired. Not dangerous, not cruel, just tired and lonely. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if the weight of years pressed down on him. Lyra studied his face. He did not look like the others. His eyes carried sadness, not hunger for power. Her mind whispered questions. Was he truly different? Or was this just another dream that would break? She hugged the blanket he gave her and stared at him. The laughter of the market still rang in her ears, but his quiet voice saying, "You are safe here," was stronger. For the first time, she felt a flicker of something new. Not trust, not yet, but a small beginning, maybe, just maybe. This human's choice was not madness, but something greater. And in the silence of that night, two broken souls, one lonely man and one beaten girl, sat together under the same roof, strangers in blood but slowly tied by something that felt like the first step toward family. The morning came quietly. A thin light entered through the broken window. Daniel was already awake, sitting at the table with a cup of cold tea. His eyes looked tired but steady. Lyra sat on the bed, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. She had not slept much, her body was safe, but her mind was still trapped in fear. She stared at him, wondering who he really was. He had not chained her, he had not shouted. He had not sold her again. Instead, he had given her food, water, and rest. It was strange, too strange. She waited for the moment when he would change, when his kindness would turn into cruelty. Because that was the rule she had always known. Daniel stood and said softly, "We need supplies." He looked at her with calm eyes. "Come with me." Lyra froze, her heart jumped. Go outside with him. Among people, her legs trembled, but his voice was not harsh. He offered his hand after a long pause. She placed her small hand in his. His touch was warm, steady. They walked through the streets, Daniel moving with quiet steps, Lyra staying close, almost hiding behind him. The city was alive with noise, but she heard only the whispers around them. People stared at the pair, a human and a broken alien slave walking side by side. Some laughed, some sneered. "He bought trash," someone muttered. Lyra's chest tightened. She lowered her head, shame burning her skin. Daniel heard the words, but he did not stop. He did not defend her with angry shouts. Instead, he kept walking, his hand still holding hers. His silence was stronger than their mockery. Lyra glanced up, and for a moment she saw it. He was not ashamed, not even a little. He walked as if she mattered, as if the whispers did not exist. At the market stalls, Daniel bought bread, vegetables, and medicine. He counted his coins carefully. Each credit he spent seemed heavy. He did not have much, Lyra saw that. Yet he still chose food that was soft, easy for her broken teeth. He still bought medicine for her wounds. She stared at him in disbelief. Why would he care? As they walked back, she studied him. His shoulders were broad but tired, his steps slow but firm. His face showed a life of hardship. But his eyes were different. There was loneliness there, deep and quiet. She wondered if that was why he chose her, not because she was useful, not because she was valuable, but because he too was broken inside. When they reached home, Daniel placed the food on the table. He boiled water, mixed herbs, and gently cleaned her wounds. His hands were rough but careful. Lyra flinched at every touch, waiting for pain, but he only whispered, "It's all right." The words made her chest ache. She could not remember the last time someone told her it was all right. Days turned into weeks. The house remained quiet. Daniel spoke little, and Lyra spoke even less. Their silence was heavy but not empty. It was the silence of two souls learning to breathe again. Every day he cooked, worked, and returned with small things to make her life softer. Every night she watched him sit alone at the table, staring into the lamp as if remembering ghosts. Sometimes she wanted to ask him, "Why did you choose me? Why do you care?" But the words stayed locked in her throat. She feared the answer. What if he said it was a mistake? What if he sent her away? So she stayed silent one evening. As rain tapped against the roof, Daniel sat with a small box in his hand. Inside were old photos. He looked at them for a long time. Lyra peeked from the bed. She saw the picture of a woman, smiling, and two small children. Daniel's fingers trembled as he touched the photo. His face was full of sorrow. He noticed her watching and closed the box quickly. Their eyes met for a moment. Lyra understood he had lost something too. Maybe a family, maybe love. She felt her own pain echo with his. Two broken stories meeting in one room that night. Daniel left a plate of food beside her and whispered, "You don't have to be afraid anymore." His voice was soft. Almost breaking, Lyra held the plate in her hands. Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this strange human's choice was real. She lay awake thinking. The journey was not only through streets or cities. It was a journey through silence, through wounds, through mistrust. Each step forward was slow, fragile, but with every day, the silence between them began to change. It was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of healing. For the first time in her life, Lyra thought maybe she was not trash. Maybe she was not worthless. Maybe, in this silent journey, she could find something she had never known before, a place to belong. The days moved slowly. Each morning the pale light crept into the small house. Daniel rose first, his steps quiet, his routine steady. Lyra often woke to the smell of warm food or the soft sound of water boiling. She still did not understand. Each act of kindness felt strange. Like a dream she feared would end if she opened her eyes too wide. Her body was weak. The wounds on her arms and legs burned when she moved. Her broken teeth made eating painful. Sometimes she hid the food under her blanket, thinking she could not finish it. But Daniel noticed. He always noticed instead of anger. He began preparing softer meals, soups, and mashed vegetables, food she could eat without suffering. One evening, he placed a bowl before her. Steam rising gently, she stared at it, her hands trembling. Daniel pulled a chair close and sat across from her. His voice was low. Eat slowly. She lifted the spoon. The soup touched her lips. It was warm, gentle on her teeth, her eyes watered. She had forgotten food could bring comfort instead of pain. Daniel watched her with patient eyes. He never rushed her, never forced her. Every movement showed his quiet care. She felt her chest tighten. Why did he care? Why for her? Later, he brought a small box of medicine from the market. His hands carefully opened bandages. His rough fingers cleaned her wounds. She flinched at first, bracing for cruelty. But his touch stayed soft, steady, he murmured. It will heal. The words sank deep, almost like magic, night after night. He repeated the routine: wash, clean, cover. Each wound slowly closed, each scar became lighter. Her body began to respond. She could stand longer, walk steadier. The mirror in her mind still showed a broken girl. But little by little, the reflection began to change. Lyra often sat by the window looking at the street. She saw other slaves dragged by, beaten and chained, her stomach twisted. That could have been her. That should have been her. She turned back to the man who sat quietly at the table. Fixing broken tools or reading old papers, Daniel did not speak much. But his silence was not heavy with cruelty. It was filled with something else: patience, waiting, maybe even hope. One night a storm raged outside. Lightning cracked the sky. Thunder shook the walls. Lyra trembled under her blanket, memories of cages and violence flooding back. Daniel lit a lamp and sat nearby. Not too close, not too far. His presence was steady. She peeked out from under the blanket. His face calm, his voice soft. It's only the storm, she whispered, her voice rough. Storms hurt. The words surprised even her. She had not spoken freely in years. Daniel looked at her. His eyes held no judgment, only understanding. He replied gently, Not here, not now. Something inside her shifted. It was small, fragile, but it was real. She was beginning to believe him. The days stretched into weeks. Lyra's steps grew stronger. Her teeth still hurt, but she could smile a little without bleeding. She laughed once, a small sound, almost by accident, when Daniel dropped a pan and cursed softly. The sound shocked them both. She covered her mouth. Her eyes wide, but Daniel smiled, a real smile, his voice almost warm. You should laugh more. Her chest felt strange, heavy and light at the same time. No one ever wanted her laughter before. They wanted her silence, her obedience, but this man wanted her to heal, wanted her to laugh. One afternoon, Daniel returned from the market with a small mirror. He placed it on the table. Lyra stared at it, afraid. Mirrors were her enemy. They reminded her of her broken teeth, her scars, her ugliness. She shook her head, refusing. But Daniel said quietly, Look again, not as trash, but as yourself. With trembling hands, she lifted the mirror. Her reflection stared back. Bruises fading, wounds healing. Her eyes still carried shadows, but they also carried light. She touched the glass, whispering, Is this me? Daniel nodded. Yes, it's you, not trash. Not worthless. Her throat tightened. Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever said those words for so long. She believed she was less than nothing, but now she began to see a girl. A person, not a broken object. At night, as Daniel sat at the table staring at his old box of photos, Lyra watched him. She understood a little now. He too carried wounds, not on his skin, but deep inside. He was healing her body, but maybe she was healing his heart. And so in that small house, pain began to turn into healing. Scars began to fade. Silence began to change. It was not a quick miracle, not a sudden transformation. It was slow, fragile, but it was real. For the first time in her life, Lyra allowed herself to believe that tomorrow might be better than yesterday. The bond between Daniel and Lyra did not form in a single moment. It was not sudden, not magical. It grew slowly, like a seed under cold soil. Every small act of kindness, every silent evening, every careful word added weight to something invisible between them. Lyra still carried fear. Sometimes when Daniel moved too quickly, she flinched. Sometimes when his voice rose. Even by mistake, she shrank back. Her body remembered chains and cruelty too well. But Daniel never struck her, never shouted at her. He always paused, his face softening, as if he knew her pain without her speaking. One evening, He placed 2 bowls of food on the table instead of 1. For weeks he had eaten little, giving her more. But now he sat across from her, breaking bread, eating with her. Lyra hesitated, staring at him. Daniel smiled faintly. "Family shares meals," he said simply. The word family echoed in her ears like a dream. She whispered it to herself that night, quietly, as if afraid it might disappear. Slowly, she began to speak more. At first, only single words. Yes, no, water. Then small phrases. Her voice was broken, rough. But Daniel always listened as if her words were treasures. He never rushed her, never mocked her. Sometimes he even asked her questions about her past. Not to dig into her pain, but to let her know her story mattered. One day, Lyra sat near the window, watching children play in the street. Her eyes followed them with longing, Daniel noticed. He sat beside her and asked softly, "Did you have brothers or sisters?" Lyra's lips trembled. "Long ago," she whispered. Her voice cracked. She did not speak further. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, warm and steady. "You're not alone now," he said. That night she dreamed of her lost family. But when she woke crying, Daniel was there, sitting near her bed, holding a lamp. He did not ask questions. He only said, "It's all right. You're safe," and stayed until she fell asleep again. His presence was enough. The bond grew stronger in small, fragile ways. Lyra began helping him with little tasks. She washed the cups, folded the blankets, swept the floor. At first she feared he would beat her if she made mistakes, but when she spilled water one day, Daniel only chuckled, cleaned it with her, and said, "Happens to everyone." Her chest ached. She could not believe mistakes could be forgiven so gently. Sometimes in the evenings, Daniel would tell stories. Not long ones, just small memories of his past. He spoke of the forest he grew up near, of fishing in a quiet river, of a mother who sang softly while cooking. His voice carried both warmth and sorrow. Lyra listened with wide eyes. These were things she never knew, simple joys she had never tasted. His words painted colors in her world that had always been gray. Once she surprised him. She whispered, "Tell me more." Daniel looked at her, almost shocked, then smiled. He told her another story and another. Lyra leaned closer, listening. Her heart began to feel lighter. The laughter came slowly, fragile but real. One evening, Daniel tried to fix a broken chair. He sat on it proudly when he finished, only for the chair to collapse under him. Lyra gasped, then suddenly laughed. A sharp, sweet sound. Daniel sat on the floor, rubbing his back, then laughed too. The room filled with something it had never held before, joy. From that night, laughter began to visit more often. It was still shy, still soft, but it was there. Lyra began to look at Daniel differently, not as an owner, not as a stranger, but as something in between, a protector, a companion, maybe even family. But the bond was fragile. Shadows still lingered. Some nights, Lyra woke screaming from nightmares, her voice raw, her body shaking. Daniel always rushed to her side, lighting the lamp, whispering calm words. He never left her alone in the dark. Each time she clung to him a little longer, trusting him a little more. One evening, as the sun painted the sky red, Daniel sat outside the house. Lyra joined him, her steps quiet. She sat beside him, not too close, not too far. For a long time they watched the sky. Then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Thank you." Daniel turned his head. His eyes glistened. He did not answer with words, only placed his hand over hers. That small gesture said everything. The fragile bond between them was no longer invisible. It was real, delicate, and growing. Two broken souls had begun to weave something new, something precious. Neither of them called it family yet, but deep inside, both of them knew that was exactly what it was becoming. The peace in Daniel's small home did not last forever. Outside, the world was still cruel. The traitors who once laughed at Lyra's broken body had not forgotten. To them, no slave could simply vanish into the hands of a human. They began to whisper, asking questions, searching for the man who paid 2 credits for trash. Some thought Daniel had discovered hidden value in the girl. Others believed she held some secret power. One evening, as Daniel returned from the market, he noticed the stairs. Eyes followed him longer than usual. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "That's the human, the one who bought the worthless slave." A voice hissed. Another whispered, "Why protect her? Maybe she is not so worthless after all." Daniel felt the weight of suspicion pressing closer. When he reached home, Lyra rushed to him. She had been waiting by the door, her eyes filled with worry. She sensed the change in the air. Daniel placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Stay inside," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Days passed and the tension grew. Strange figures began lurking near the alley. Watching the house, sometimes Daniel spotted them. Sometimes Lyra felt their presence in the shadows. Fear crept back into her heart, she whispered one night. "They will take me." Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, not while I'm here." But the shadows did not vanish. They grew bolder, knocking on the door late at night. Daniel did not open. Their voices hissed through the wood. "Give her back, human. She's ours, worthless or not. She belongs in the market." Daniel stood in silence. His fists clenched. He did not answer. After a while, the voices faded into the night. But the threat remained. Lyra trembled. She curled under the blanket. Her body shaking, Daniel sat beside her, keeping the lamp lit. "They won't take you," he whispered. But in his heart he knew danger was coming. The next day they came openly. 3 traders walked into the street outside his home. Their clothes were rich, their eyes full of arrogance. One of them banged on the door, shouting, "Human, open! You have what belongs to us." Daniel stepped outside before they could enter, his body blocking the doorway. Behind him, Lyra hid in the shadows, her heart pounding. "She doesn't belong to you," Daniel said evenly. His voice carried no fear. The traders sneered. "She is property. You bought her, yes. But you cannot keep her like family. We want her back. She might be worth more than we thought." Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes burned with quiet fire. "She's not property," he said. The word struck the traders like an insult. They laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "Look at you. A lonely man protecting broken trash. You can't fight us." "You're only one human." Lyra's breath caught. She wanted to scream, to beg him not to fight. But her voice failed. She clutched the blanket tighter, watching as Daniel stood against the men. "I won't let you take her," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm like stone. The traders exchanged glances. Their smirks twisted into anger. One of them stepped closer. His hand reaching for a hidden weapon, Lyra gasped. Daniel raised his arm. Pushing the man back, the movement was fast, sharp. His strength surprised them. A crowd began to gather. Neighbors peeked out of windows, children whispered. People stared at the scene. A human standing between cruel traders and a fragile alien girl. Whispers spread quickly. Some mocked him, some admired him. But all eyes watched as the standoff grew tense. The traders hissed, "You'll regret this, human." No one protects slaves, not here, not anywhere. Daniel stood tall. "Then let me be the first." His words rang through the street like a challenge. For a moment, silence fell. Then the traders stepped back, their faces twisted with fury. "This isn't over," one spat. They turned and left, their threats echoing in the air. Daniel closed the door slowly. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed firm. He turned to Lyra, who stood pale and shaking. She whispered, "Why?" Her voice was weak, broken. Daniel looked at her, his voice soft but steady. "Because you're not trash, you're family." Her knees gave way. She sank to the floor, tears spilling from her eyes. The word family echoed in her heart. Stronger than fear, stronger than pain. Daniel knelt beside her. Placing his arm gently around her shoulders, she leaned against him, for the first time believing fully that he meant it. But deep in her chest, she knew the shadows would return again. The world would not let go so easily, and yet, for the first time, she did not feel alone, because now, someone had chosen her, not as a slave, not as trash, but as family. The days after the confrontation were heavy with silence. The traders had left, but their threats lingered in the air like smoke. Lyra often sat by the window, her eyes darting to every shadow in the street. She was afraid they would return, afraid Daniel would suffer because of her. Daniel noticed her fear. He worked longer hours, fixed broken things for neighbors, earned a few extra credits, but he always came back early. He never left her alone for long each time he stepped inside. His steady voice reassured her. "I'm here." Lyra wanted to believe it, but doubt still lived inside her heart. She whispered one night as they sat by the lamp, "They will come back. They will hurt you because of me." Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel looked at her quietly, then shook his head. "Let them try. I won't let anyone take you." The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. She was not used to being defended, not used to being wanted. The word family echoed again in her mind, but she was too afraid to speak it aloud. One morning, the shadows returned. 3 figures stood at the edge of the alley. This time not laughing, not mocking, but angry. More traders had joined them, 5 in total. Their eyes sharp, their voices harsh. "Human, you've had your fun, hand her over now. Or pay with blood." Daniel stepped outside. His body tense, his neighbors gathered again. Whispers spreading fast. Everyone expected him to surrender the girl. No one fought traitors. No one risked their life for a slave. But Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "She stays with me," the crowd gasped. The traders snarled, "She's nothing." "Why protect her?" Daniel's jaw tightened. His answer was simple, clear. "Because she's family." The word struck Lyra like lightning. She stood in the doorway, trembling, her broken teeth, her scars, her thin body, all of it once mocked as worthless, now shielded by a man who called her family in front of everyone. The traders moved forward, fists ready, weapons hidden. Daniel did not step back, his fists clenched, his eyes steady. The crowd waited, unsure if they were about to see a man destroyed. But something unexpected happened. A neighbor stepped out. An old woman, she shouted, "Leave him be. He has the right to protect his home." Then another man stepped forward. "The girl has harmed no one. Let her stay." Slowly, voices rose from the crowd. People who once mocked now spoke out, not for the girl, but for the man who stood with such unshakable will. The traders hesitated. They had power, but power meant little without fear. The human had broken that fear. His courage had spread. They cursed under their breath, finally retreating with angry glares. "This isn't the end," they spat. But their words carried less weight now. When the street grew quiet again, Daniel turned back inside, his face tired, his body trembling slightly from the tension. Lyra stood frozen. Her heart pounded so hard she could not speak. Tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered, Why risk everything for me?" Daniel knelt in front of her, his rough hand wiping away her tears. His voice was gentle, steady. "Because no one should be alone. Because you deserve more than pain, because I chose you." Her breath caught. The world seemed to stop. She stared at him, her lips trembling. Finally, in a voice soft but clear, she whispered, "Family." Daniel's eyes softened, a rare smile spreading across his face. "Yes, family," he repeated. Lyra fell against him. Her small arms wrapping around his neck, she cried, not with fear this time, but with release. Her broken body had healed slowly, but her heart had taken longer. Now at last the wall of fear cracked, and something new poured out. Trust, belonging, hope. From that day forward, the bond was no longer fragile, it was strong, unshakable. Daniel and Lyra shared meals, laughter, and even silence without fear. She helped him in his work. He taught her words. They built something together. The world still looked at them with suspicion, but inside the small home they were more than a man and a slave. They were family. Sometimes Daniel sat at the table, staring at his old photos. The woman and children he lost would always remain in his heart. But now when Lyra sat beside him, smiling shyly, he felt a new light in the darkness. He had lost one family, but he had found another, and Lyra, once beaten and sold for 2 credits, once mocked as worthless trash, now stood taller. Her scars remained, but they no longer defined her. She was no longer just a slave. She was chosen, she was loved, she was family. The story of the $2 slave and the lonely human spread quietly through the streets. Some laughed, some shook their heads, but others whispered with awe. They said, "A human paid almost nothing, yet created something priceless." And so against a world built on cruelty, against shadows that would never fully disappear, a human and an alien girl built their own truth. A truth simple yet powerful. No one wanted her, no one cared, until one man chose differently, and in that choice, a beaten slave became something greater. A daughter, a family, a hope.